Okay, let's dive in. We're looking today at someone who's become almost mythical in modern history, Stephen Paul Jobs.
Right, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just think of the product launches, the turtleneck, but there's so much more.
Exactly. We're going beyond that today. Our sources give us this really deep biographical picture. We're talking businessman, inventor, the pioneer of the personal computer era, but also the complex person behind it all.
Yeah, the goal here for you listening isn't just to rehash the legend. It's about digging into the source material, finding those surprising moments, the pivots, the influences like Zen Buddhism, strangely enough, that shaped him.
And those really formative, sometimes difficult periods like his time at Apple first, then Next Pixar,
Yeah,
and those hidden personal struggles. They're all connected.
absolutely. We want to trace that force of will, see what really made him tick, why he could be so brilliant and, frankly, so contradictory.
So let's start right at the beginning, because his birth and adoption, it's not just background, is it? It feels foundational.
It really is. Born in 1955, Stephen Paul Jobs. His biological parents, Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, were young graduate students, unmarried. A difficult situation back then.
And they gave him up for adoption pretty much immediately.
That's right. And Joanne Schiebel, his biological mother, had this very specific condition for the adoption. She insisted the adoptive parents had to be college graduates. Education was paramount to her.
Which is where the first twist comes in. The couple she initially chose, a lawyer and his wife, they backed out. They wanted a girl.
Yeah, so the opportunity then fell to Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple. Paul was a machinist, Clara an accountant. Good people, but crucially, no college degrees.
So Schiebel hesitated.
Dramatically so. The sources say she refused to sign the papers for weeks. She only relented when Paul and Clara made a really serious promise.
What was that?
They promised, legally binding, that they would save money and absolutely send Steve to college, no matter what.
Wow, that's a heavy promise. Extracted under pressure, really.
It absolutely was. And it hung over them financially later on. But Steve's reaction to all this, his identity, that's what's fascinating.
How so?
He completely rejected the term adoptive parents, hated it. He'd get visibly angry, apparently.
Really?
Yeah, he considered Paul and Clara his parents 1,000%. Full stop.
And his biological parents?
It was, well, quite brutal about it. He referred to them consistently, even to his biographer, as just his sperm and egg bank, nothing more.
Ouch! That's a really stark way to put it. Almost like he was proactively defining his own reality, choosing his family.
I think that's exactly it. Choosing commitment over genetics. You see that theme of control, of defining his world very early on.
Okay, so moving into his school years, it sounds like that strong will, it caused some problems. He wasn't an easy kid.
No, not at all. The sources mention frequent misbehavior, resisting authority figures. He got bullied quite a bit in middle school, too.
And that led to something pretty extreme in 7th grade, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. An ultimatum. He basically told Paul and Clara, you either move me to a better school district or I'm dropping out.
At 12 or 13? That's incredible nerve.
Incredible. And remember, the Jobs family wasn't wealthy. Paul was a mechanic. But they scraped together everything they had, nearly all their savings, to move to a different house in Los Altos, just so he could go to Cupertino Junior High and later Homestead High.
That really shows their dedication. But also, it shows Steve learned early that if he pushed hard enough, reality would bend.
That's a good way to put it. But it wasn't just defiance. He was also starting to synthesize things. He loved literature, Shakespeare, Plato, saw himself as a humanities guy.
But he was also tinkering with electronics in the garage with his dad, right?
Exactly. And that's where Edwin Land, the Polaroid founder, comes in as this huge influence.
How did Land influence him?
Land talked about the importance of people who could stand at the intersection of humanities and sciences. And for Jobs, hearing that, it was like a light bulb went off. He said, that's what I want to do.
And you can basically draw a straight line from that idea to the Mac, the iPhone, everything Apple became known for. Technology plus design.
Absolutely. It became his core philosophy. And he started putting that boldness into practice really young, like the Bill Hewlett story.
Oh, yeah, tell us about that. He was, 13?
13 years old, needed some parts for a frequency counter he was building. So he just looks up Bill Hewlett, the Bill Hewlett of HP in the phone book, calls him at home, and asks for the parts.
You're kidding. What happened?
Hewlett was apparently charmed, maybe a bit stunned. He chatted with him for 20 minutes, gave him the parts, and offered him a summer job at HP working on the assembly line.
That takes serious guts. Or maybe just a complete lack of awareness of boundaries.
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
It shows that fearlessness, that willingness to approach anyone, that stayed with him. But then comes college, and that promise his parents made comes due.
Reed College, right? 1972, a notoriously expensive liberal arts school.
Incredibly expensive. Paul and Claire really stretched themselves thin to send him there, fulfilling that promise they made years before.
And then he drops out.
After just one semester. It's such a contradiction. His reason, he said he didn't want to waste his parents' money on required courses he found meaningless.
But he didn't actually leave.
No, that's the key. He hung around Reed for another 18 months or so, slept on friends' floors, returned Coke bottles for food money, basically lived like a bohemian drop-in.
And audited classes he was interested in.
Exactly, including one specific class that became legendary in the Steve Jobs story.
The calligraphy course.
The calligraphy course, taught by a former Trappist monk, Robert Palladino. At the time, it must have seemed completely random, totally disconnected from technology.
But later.
Later, in his famous 2005 Stanford commencement speech, Jobs credited that single course with inspiring the Macintosh's beautiful typography.
Yeah.
Multiple typefaces, proportionally spaced fonts, things we take for granted now, but revolutionary then.
He said without that course, the Mac would have looked like every other clunky PC. It's that connecting the dots, looking backward idea he talked about.
Perfectly illustrates it, taking seemingly unrelated experiences and weaving them into something new. And this period wasn't just about academics or lack thereof. It was also about his spiritual quest.
The trip to India in 1974.
Right. 7 months trekking through India looking for enlightenment. He came back with a shaved head, wearing traditional Indian clothing. He also studied Zen Buddhism quite seriously with a monk named Kupun Chino Otogawa.
And experimented with psychedelics.
Yeah.
LSD.
Yes, he was very open about that later, called his LSD experiences one of the 2 or 3 most important things he'd ever done, said it expanded his consciousness.
So you've got this mix. Counterculture, Zen aesthetics, dropping out, calligraphy. It's a potent brew.
It really is. And all that unconventional thinking, that willingness to operate outside the lines, it leads directly to what Jobs himself called the real genesis of Apple.
Not the apple eye in the garage.
Before that,
Yeah.
the blue box.
Ah, the phone freaking device. Tell us about that.
Designed by Steve Wozniak, his technically brilliant friend, it was this little electronic device that could mimic the tones used by the phone company, allowing you to make free long-distance calls. Illegally, of course.
And Jobs saw a business opportunity.
Immediately. He realized they could build and sell these things. They started making them clandestinely, selling them to students and, well, other interested parties.
So their first venture was technically illegal.
Yep. And Jobs later said that experience was crucial. It showed them, 2 young guys with no resources, that they could build something cool, take on a giant corporation like AT&T, and actually win. Or at least get away with it. He said that confidence was the true start.
It's a risky foundation. And speaking of risk and their partnership, we have to touch on the Atari breakout incident, don't we? It reveals a different side.
We do. It's uncomfortable, but important.
Yeah.
Jobs was working briefly at Atari, and they offered a bonus for designing the arcade game Breakout using fewer computer chips. Jobs knew Wozniak was the wizard who could do it.
So he brought Woz in to help.
Right. Wozniak pulled an all-nighter, achieved this incredible reduction in chips far beyond what Atari thought possible. It earned a $5,000 bonus, a huge amount back then.
And Jobs.
Jobs told Wozniak that Atari only paid them $750 for the job. He gave Wozniak half of that, $375, and pocketed the rest, the $4,625.
Wow. Wozniak didn't know.
Not for about 10 years, he found out later. And the really telling part, according to the sources, is Wozniak said if Jobs had just been honest and said he needed the money, he probably would have given it to him anyway.
So the deception wasn't even necessary. It just showed something about Jobs' character at that stage, a ruthlessness, a willingness to exploit trust.
It certainly suggests that.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of the complex, sometimes manipulative dynamics that were present right from the very beginning of their legendary partnership.
Okay, so they've had this blue box success, they've got the Atari experience under their belt, and then comes 1976, Apple Computer Company.
Founded in the Jobs family garage. Classic Silicon Valley origin story. They funded it by selling Wozniak's prized HP calculator and Jobs' Volkswagen van. Literally bootstrapping.
And the roles were pretty clear from the start, weren't they?
Very clear. Wozniak was the engineering genius. He designed the Apple IVs and then the revolutionary Apples III. He was focused on making the technology work, making it open and accessible to hobbyists.
While Jobs was the visionary, the salesman.
Both. He drove the vision, the marketing, the packaging. He was obsessed with the look and feel, how the user experienced the machine. Even early on, he focused on aesthetics and simplicity in a way other tech people just didn't.
And the Apple II, launched in '77, that was the breakthrough.
Oh, absolutely. It became one of the first highly successful mass-produced microcomputers. It really made Apple wealthy and established their brand. But even its design involved a major fight between Jobs and Wozniak.
What was the fight about?
Expansion slots. Jobs, driven by his aesthetic purity, wanted only 2 slots. Keep it simple, keep it closed.
And Wozniak?
Wozniak, the engineer and hobbyist, knew users would want to add things: printers, disk drives, modems. He argued passionately for 8 slots, for openness and flexibility.
Who won?
Wozniak did. Apparently, the argument got so heated, Wozniak told Jobs to go get himself another computer if he didn't get his 8 slots.
And that openness turned out to be crucial, didn't it?
Absolutely. Those 8 slots allowed a huge third-party ecosystem of cards and peripherals to flourish. That flexibility was a major reason the Apple II dominated the market for so long. It was a lesson. Jobs. Well, maybe he didn't fully internalize at that point about the value of openness.
So Apple's growing fast. What's the next big leap? It involves Xerox.
Right. 1979, Jobs and a team from Apple visited Xerox PRC, their legendary research center, and there they saw the future.
The Xerox Alto.
Exactly. A computer with a bitmap display, windows, icons, and crucially a mouse, a graphical user interface, or GUI.
And Xerox, they didn't really see the potential.
They saw it as a research project, maybe something for high-end workstations. Jobs, however, instantly saw its potential for everyone. He realized this was how all computers should work: easy, intuitive, visual.
So he basically took that idea back to Apple.
He did. And it became the driving force behind Apple's next big projects, the Lisa and the Macintosh.
The Lisa came first in '83. High hopes, but
A commercial flop. It was groundbreaking, had the GUI, but it was slow and incredibly expensive, nearly $10,000 back then.
okay, so Lisa fails, but it paves the way for the Macintosh,
Yeah.
1984.
The Mac. Launched with that stunning Ridley Scott 1984 Super Bowl ad. The woman throwing the hammer at the Big Brother screen representing IBM.
Yeah.
Pure marketing genius.
Yeah.
Pure Jobsian rebellion.
The Mac itself was beautiful, revolutionary in its design and ease of use, but it also struggled initially.
It did. Sales started strong, but quickly faded. It was criticized for being underpowered, having no expansion slots initially. Jobs won that argument this time initially. Not enough software, and again, being quite expensive compared to the burgeoning IBM PC clones.
And this is where the internal politics at Apple really start heating up. Jobs was heading the Mac division.
Yes, running it like his own pirate ship within the company, creating a lot of internal friction. The company was growing, becoming more corporate, and Jobs' intense, often abrasive style was causing problems.
Which leads to bringing in a professional CEO, John Sculley.
From PepsiCo.
Yeah.
And the story of how Jobs recruited him is legendary.
Give us the line again.
Jobs famously challenged him. Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world?
Who could say no to that?
Scully couldn't. He came over. But the relationship, initially seen as a perfect blend of marketing savvy and tech vision, deteriorated rapidly as the Mac sales faltered, and Jobs continued to clash with Scully and the board.
And it ended badly.
Very badly. In 1985, after a failed boardroom coup attempt by Jobs, Scully and the board effectively stripped Jobs of all operational duties. He was chairman, but powerless.
So he resigned.
He resigned in September 1985, pushed out of the company he co-founded. A brutal corporate exile.
But not the end of the story. Not by a long shot. This is where the wilderness years begin.
Exactly. And almost immediately, he does what Jobs does. He starts something new. He takes a handful of key Apple employees with him and founds NextT Inc.
NextT, aimed at the higher education market. What was the vision there?
To build the ultimate workstation for universities and researchers. Technologically, NextT computers were stunning. Beautiful hardware, magnesium cubes.
Fine software.
Even more revolutionary, NextT Step, its operating system, was way ahead of its time. Object-oriented, powerful graphics, networking built-in, use the Mach kernel, just really sophisticated stuff.
For price tag.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
The first NextT computer cost $6,500 in $1988, but by the time you added the necessary peripherals, it was closer to $10,000. Universities just couldn't afford them in volume, so commercially,
It struggled.
big time. It never achieved mainstream success. But calling it a failure misses the bigger picture. It secured investment from people like Ross Perot, which gave it credibility.
And the technology itself.
Yeah.
It had a future, didn't it?
A massive future. That next step operating system. That became the foundation for Mac OS X when Apple eventually bought NXT. The failure actually provided the core technology that saved Apple later on.
Incredible irony. And wasn't there some other major historical event linked to a NXT machine?
There was. In 1990, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, working at CERN in Switzerland, actually invented the World Wide Web, created the first web browser and web server using an NXT computer.
So the machine too expensive for classrooms literally birthed the modern internet. Wow.
It's an amazing footnote. While NXT was this noble, technically brilliant, financially challenged venture, Jobs had another iron in the fire, something completely different.
Pixar.
Pixar. In 1986, he bought the computer graphics division from George Lucas's Lucasfilm for about $10 million. It was initially a high-end hardware company selling image processing computers.
But Jobs saw potential in animation.
He did. He kept funding it, reportedly pouring $50 million of his own money into it over the years, even when it was bleeding cash. He believed in the potential of computer-generated animation as a storytelling medium.
And then came Toy Story in 1995.
Boom. Everything changed. Toy Story, produced by Pixar but distributed by Disney, was a massive, critical, and commercial success. It revolutionized animation.
And suddenly, Steve Jobs, the exiled computer visionary, was also a Hollywood mogul, executive producer.
Exactly. It gave him immense credibility and, importantly, financial clout again, and it set up this really interesting dynamic with Disney.
Which eventually led to Disney buying Pixar.
Yes, in 2006, Disney acquired Pixar in an all-stock deal worth $7.4 billion. Sure. And because Jobs was the majority owner of Pixar,
He became Disney's largest individual shareholder.
by far, he owned about 7% of Disney. More than Michael Eisner, more than Roy E. Disney. It gave him a seat on the Disney board, an enormous influence.
The sources mention Bob Iger, the Disney CEO who made the deal, even speculated they might have merged Disney and Apple if Jobs had lived longer.
Iger did say that. It shows how symbiotic their relationship had become, and how much respect Iger had for Jobs' vision, stretching even beyond tech into media and entertainment.
So these exile years, NXT and Pixar, they weren't just a holding pattern. They were incredibly productive.
Absolutely. He honed his management style, too. Edwin Catmull, the co-founder of Pixar, talked about how working with Jobs changed.
How so?
Catmull said if he had an idea Jobs initially shot down, he learned to wait, gather data, and present it again calmly. Sometimes this back and forth took months.
And the outcome.
Catmull said it usually ended one of three ways. Jobs would admit Catmull was right, Catmull would realize Jobs was right, or sometimes Jobs would just yield. He'd say something like, okay, do it your way and never bring it up again.
That sounds different from the stories of his first tenure at Apple. Maybe a bit more willing to trust his key people.
It seems like it, perhaps tempered by failure, perhaps matured by experience. He learned to channel that intensity, maybe in slightly more productive ways, at least sometimes.
Okay, so the stage is set for the big return. Apple in the mid-90s is floundering, near bankruptcy, technologically adrift.
They desperately needed a modern operating system to replace the aging classic Mac OS. Their internal projects had failed. And NXT. Well, NXT had NXT step.
So Apple buys NXT in late 1996, announced in 97 for $400 million.
Primarily for the software. But the deal also brought Steve Jobs back to Apple, initially as an advisor. Then, as the company continued to struggle, the board ousted the existing CEO, Gil Amelio.
And Jobs became interim CEO, the ICEO.
Right, and he moved fast. The sources describe it as a necessary but brutal turnaround. His first priority was stopping the bleeding. Profitability above all else.
Which meant killing projects.
Lots of projects.
Right.
He famously slashed the product line down to just 4 core areas. He killed off beloved but unprofitable ventures like the Newton Message Pad, the handheld device that was actually ahead of its time, CyberDog 2.
And the Mac clones, that was a big one.
Huge. Apple had been licensing macOS to other hardware makers, hoping to gain market share like Microsoft did with Windows. But it mainly resulted in cheap clones eating into Apple's own hardware profits.
So Jobs reversed that.
He effectively killed the program by making the licensing fees prohibitively expensive. It angered the clone makers, but it reestablished Apple's control over the whole widget hardware and software integrated. That became the core strategy going forward.
The closed ecosystem. He also brought a new focus on design, didn't he? Working with Jony Ive.
That relationship was absolutely critical. He found Jony Ive already at Apple, somewhat marginalized. Jobs recognized his talent immediately, and they formed this incredible partnership. Ive became Senior VP of Industrial Design. Jobs called him his spiritual partner.
And their first big hit together.
The iMac G3 in 1998. That colorful, translucent, all-in-one computer, it looked like nothing else on the market. Fun, accessible, optimistic.
Launched with the Think Different ad campaign celebrating rebels and creatives, it was a total reset for Apple's image.
And technically, the iMac was bold too. It ditched the floppy drive entirely, pushing users toward CDs and the internet, and it standardized on USB ports.
Which really helped make USB the universal standard it is today.
Absolutely. The iMac wasn't just a product, it was a statement. It saved Apple financially and culturally. It showed Jobs was back and Apple was innovating again.
And his leadership style in this second act, still intense, still the reality distortion field.
Oh, definitely. That famed ability to persuade, cajole, inspire, and sometimes bully people into achieving things they thought were impossible, that was in full force. Engineers talk about how he could convince them black was white.
Was it a good thing? It got results, clearly.
It got results. It pushed people to do their absolute best work, to strive for perfection. But the sources also make it clear it could be incredibly demanding, stressful, and sometimes cruel for the people working under him. It was a double-edged sword.
He seemed to thrive on conflict sometimes, like the rivalry with Michael Dell.
Right. Back in 1997, when Apple was really struggling, Michael Dell was asked what he'd do with the company. He famously said he'd shut it down and give the money back to the shareholders.
Ouch. Jobs must have remembered that.
He absolutely did. Fast forward to January 2006. Apple's market capitalization surpasses Dell's. What does Jobs do? He sends an internal email to all Apple employees.
What did it say?
Just one line. Team, it turned out that Michael Dell wasn't perfect at predicting the future. Based on today's stock market close, Apple is worth more than Dell. Stocks go up and down, and things may be different tomorrow, but I thought it was worth a moment of reflection today. Steve.
Classic Jobs. A little bit of corporate gloating, framed as reflection. It must have been a huge morale boost internally.
Totally. It symbolized the turnaround. And speaking of symbols, let's talk about his uniform.
The black mock turtleneck, the jeans, the sneakers.
It wasn't accidental. He told his biographer, Walter Isaacson, that after seeing uniforms at Sony in Japan, he wanted Apple employees to have one. That idea got shot down fast.
So he adopted one for himself?
Exactly. He asked the designer, Issey Miyake, to make him a bunch of his black turtlenecks. Apparently, he ended up with hundreds. He said it was for daily convenience. One less decision to make each morning, but also...
It became his signature style. Instantly recognizable, part of the Apple brand.
Precisely. He understood the power of consistent branding right down to his own appearance. He was Apple.
Okay, so Apple's back, profitable, stylish. But the next phase is what truly transformed the company, and maybe the world. Moving beyond computers.
Into consumer electronics. Creating the digital hub strategy. The idea that the Mac would be the center, coordinating all your digital devices, and the first smash hit of that strategy.
The iPod.
1001.
1,000 songs in your pocket. It wasn't the first digital music player, but it nailed the combination of storage capacity, size, and ease of use, especially with the iTunes software.
What was the key technical innovation there, according to the sources?
A tiny 1.8-inch hard drive made by Toshiba. Most players at the time used larger 2.5-inch drives or had very limited flash memory. That small drive allowed the iPod to be incredibly compact while still holding a ton of music.
Another example of finding the right component and building the experience around it. Exactly. And the iPod wasn't just hardware. It led to the iTunes Music Store in 2003. Legal, easy, 99-cent downloads. That completely revolutionized the music industry.
And it created this massive ecosystem, hardware, software store, all tightly integrated, which paved the way for
The iPhone, 2007, announced as 3 revolutionary products in one: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator.
And it just blew away everything else on the market. The BlackBerries, the Windows mobile phones, they looked ancient overnight.
The multi-touch interface were the key. No stylus, no clunky keyboard, just your finger.
Yeah.
It changed how we interact with technology. Time magazine called it the invention of the year.
And later iterations brought things like the App Store, creating a whole new software economy, and Siri on the fours.
Right, pushing into AI assistance. The iPhone cemented Apple as not just a computer company, but the dominant force in mobile technology and arguably personal technology overall.
And he wasn't done, 2010.
The iPad. There have been tablet computers before, but again, Apple redefined the category, took the iOS interface, the multi-touch screen, and created this simple, elegant device for browsing, media consumption apps.
It essentially created the modern tablet market. So iPod, iTunes, iPhone, iPad. This incredible run in one decade. It comes back to that vision, doesn't it?
It really does. That quote he loved borrowing from Wayne Gretzky.
I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been.
That was his genius. Anticipating needs, simplifying complexity, integrating hardware, software, and services into experiences people didn't even know they wanted until they saw them.
He even tried applying that direct, get-it-done approach to politics, didn't he? Meeting with President Obama.
Yes, the sources mentioned a meeting where Jobs complained directly to Obama about regulations and the difficulty in building factories in the U.S. He was particularly focused on the shortage of software engineers.
What was his solution?
Typically direct. He apparently told Obama that any foreign student who got an engineering degree in the U.S. should automatically get a green card stapled to their diploma.
Simple. Problem solved. What did Obama say?
Well, Obama reportedly explained the political realities, the complexities of immigration law, the need for consensus, how government actually works.
And Jobs' reaction?
Fury. He later told his biographer Isaacson something like, "The president is very smart, but he kept explaining to us reasons why things can't get done. It infuriates me." He apparently predicted Obama would be a one-term president because he couldn't just force solutions through.
It shows that same impatience, that belief that reality should bend to will, applied to a system far more complex than even Apple.
Exactly. He couldn't understand why everyone didn't just see the obvious solution and implement it immediately like he could within his own company.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit, because for all the professional success, his personal life, as documented in the sources, was, well, messy, especially concerning his first child, Lisa.
Incredibly messy, and for a long time, quite cruel. Lisa Brennan Jobs was born in 1978 to Jobs and his longtime partner, Chrisanne Brennan. Apple was just taking off.
And Jobs denied paternity.
Vehemently,
No.
for years, even after DNA tests showed a 94.1% probability he was the father.
How did he argue against that?
The sources quote him claiming in court documents that the result meant nearly 28% of the male population of the United States could be the father, a deliberately obtuse and cynical interpretation. He fought child support payments.
And the Apple Lisa computer, named after her.
He denied that too, publicly, for a long time. He insisted Lisa stood for Local Integrated Software Architecture, just a technical acronym.
But later,
Much later, talking to Walter Isaacson for his biography, he finally admitted it, very quietly. Obviously, it was named for my daughter.
when did things start to change between them?
It seems the reconciliation began slowly after he left Apple in 1985. He started spending more time with Lisa, apologized for his past behavior, and a really key factor, strangely enough, was finding his biological family.
He sought them out after his adoptive mother, Clara, passed away.
Yes, he'd promised Clara he wouldn't while she was alive. But after her death, he hired detectives and found his birth mother, Joanne Shebel Simpson. And through her, he discovered he had a full biological sister, Mona Simpson,
The novelist.
the acclaimed novelist.
Yeah.
And apparently Steve and Mona formed an incredibly close, intense bond almost immediately. She became one of the most important people in his life.
What did Mona say about meeting him?
She described him as totally straightforward and lovely, just a normal and sweet guy, which is not the description you often hear from his professional life.
Yeah.
It suggests a different side he could show in private.
And through Mona and Joanne, he learned about his biological father, Abdulfatah Jandali.
Yes. And this is one of the most bizarre, almost unbelievable twists in the entire story. Jandali, who was Syrian, had left his academic career and was at one point managing a Mediterranean restaurant
Where?
near San Jose, right in Silicon Valley. Yes. And Jandali apparently mentioned casually to Mona before she knew who her brother was, something like, "Yeah, I used to run this great restaurant. All the tech guys came in. Even Steve Jobs used to eat there. Nice guy, big tipper."
So Steve Jobs had actually met his biological father, had dinner at his restaurant, tipped him well, and neither of them knew.
Exactly. It's utterly astounding. A chance encounter between father and son, completely unaware of their connection.
Did Jobs ever meet him formally after learning this?
No. Mona offered to arrange it, but Jobs refused. He reportedly told Mona he didn't trust Jandali, feared he might try to blackmail him or exploit the connection. It shows that lingering distrust, perhaps rooted in the abandonment, perhaps just his nature.
Wow. Such a complicated personal history, which leads us to the final, difficult chapter, his health battle.
In October 2003, during a routine scan, doctors discovered a tumor on his pancreas. But it wasn't the typically aggressive, fast-moving form of pancreatic cancer.
It was a rarer type.
Much rarer. An islet cell neuroendocrine tumor. Significantly more treatable, especially if caught early and removed surgically. His doctors urged immediate surgery.
But he
He
refused.
refused surgery for 9 months. 9 critical months. Instead, true to his countercultural roots and distrust of mainstream medicine, he pursued alternative therapies.
What kind of therapies?
Strict vegan diets, fruit juices, acupuncture, herbal remedies. He even consulted a psychic. He seemed to believe he could will the cancer away through diet and mental focus.
And the
They were
doctors.
horrified, pleading with him. But it was that reality distortion field turned inward. He finally agreed to the surgery, the Whipple procedure, in July 2004.
Did he regret the delay?
Isaacson, his biographer, says yes. Jobs later expressed deep regret about that decision. Many close to him, and medical experts looking back, believe that 9-month delay might have been the difference between cure and ultimately death. It's impossible to know for sure, but it's a tragic what if.
The surgery seemed successful initially.
It did. He returned to Apple, launched the iPhone and iPad during this period, but the cancer eventually returned and had metastasized. In 2009, he needed a liver transplant,
And this is where Tim Cook offered part of his own liver.
an incredible act of loyalty. Cook discovered he shared the same rare blood type as Jobs and went through testing to see if he could be a living donor. He could.
What was Jobs' reaction when Cook offered?
Explosive anger. Cook described Jobs sitting up in bed and yelling at him, "No, I'm not letting you do that. I'll never let you do that." He flatly refused.
Why? Pride. Control.
Probably a mix. Maybe seeing it as an intrusion, a violation, maybe not wanting to be indebted in such a profound way. He did eventually receive a transplant from a deceased donor in Tennessee later that year.
But his health continued to fail.
Yes. He took another medical leave in January 2011, formally resigned as CEO in August 2011, handing the reins to Tim Cook.
But he kept working.
Right up until the very end. The sources say he was involved in product discussions, looking at designs, literally the day before he died.
He passed away on October 5, 2011. At home, surrounded by family, he was 56.
His sister Mona Simpson wrote a beautiful eulogy where she described his final moments. His last words, apparently repeated 3 times while looking off at something past his family, were, "Oh well, oh well, oh well."
Chilling. A sense of wonder, even at the end. What about his legacy beyond the products? Philanthropy, for instance. It's kind of murky.
It is. Early on, after leaving Apple the first time, he started a foundation, the Stephen P. Jobs Foundation. But he shut it down quickly, supposedly disillusioned with conventional charity.
And when he returned to Apple,
He famously cut all of Apple's corporate philanthropy programs, arguing the best way Apple could contribute was by making great products and creating jobs. Apple was often criticized for being uncharitable during his second tenure. He also declined to sign the Giving Pledge.
but was he personally generous?
Privately, yes, according to some sources. He and his wife, Laureen Powell Jobs, reportedly donated anonymously over the years. After his death, it was revealed he'd given $50 million to Stanford hospitals. And Bono confirmed that Apple did contribute significantly, tens of millions, to the Product Reddit campaign fighting AIDS in Africa, though Jobs was initially reluctant about the branding.
So not a traditional philanthropist, but maybe focused on specific impacts he believed in.
Perhaps. His passion, his life's work, was clearly invention and design.
Which brings us to the patents.
The sheer number is staggering. Over 450 patents list him as an inventor or co-inventor, many for design, the look and feel.
But the truly mind-blowing fact revealed in the source material is how many were granted after his death.
How many?
141 patents were granted posthumously. Think about that. He was filing patent applications, working on new ideas right up until the end.
Even when he was critically ill. Yes. Isaacson describes him sketching ideas in the hospital, not just for future Apple products, but improvements for the hospital equipment around him. He redesigned his 5E stand, sketched ways to improve the oxygen monitor. He couldn't stop designing, couldn't stop trying to improve things.
So wrapping this up, what are the key takeaways when you sift through all this complex source material?
Contradiction is the main theme. The Zen Buddhist who was a ruthless businessman. The counterculture rebel who built a corporate empire. The man who denied his daughter but later embraced his biological sister.
The visionary who got kicked out used his exile to build NXT and Pixar, and then used their success and technology to stage the ultimate comeback at Apple.
Exactly, and that core philosophy, the fusion of technology and the humanities, making powerful tools beautiful and intuitive, that's his enduring contribution to design. But you can't separate the genius from the flaws, the reality distortion field, from the distortion.
So that leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. Those 141 posthumous patents. It's stunning. Jobs always insisted he wasn't driven by money, but by making great products.
Right. And the fact he was designing, inventing, sketching new ideas literally on his deathbed.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was his deepest identity his truest legacy? Less about being a CEO or a billionaire.
And more about just being this relentless, obsessive, lifelong inventor and designer, someone who had to create right until his last breath.
What kind of internal fire, what intensity does it take to keep generating ideas for a future you know you won't see? That creative drive sustained across a lifetime, despite everything, that's something profound to consider.